welcome to Newfoundland and Labrador Studies 2205. This is Unit 4, Towards the Future, Section 2, Lesson 3, on the offshore oil industry. I'm Miss Fleming, your instructor for this course. Let's get going. So, the oil industry has been a growing sector in Newfoundland and Labrador since the late 20th century. It has greatly contributed to the provincial economy since that time, creating jobs and provincial revenues, helping curb outmigration, and stimulating consumer spending. According to Statistics Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador experienced more economic growth in 2007 than any other Canadian province, largely due to the oil industry. While this industry has become incredibly lucrative as part of our economy, it can be a dangerous and difficult job as workers battle the cruel North Atlantic. Let's talk about the discovery first. The first commercial offshore oil field discovered off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador was in 1979. The oil field, known as Hibernia, is located off the Grand Banks in the Jeanne d'Arc Basin. Construction of the Hibernia platform and additional oil extraction structures began in 1990, and it produced its first barrel of oil in 1997. Other oil fields continued to be discovered from exploratory drilling through the later years of the 20th century, with 3 more discovered in the 1980s alone. So let's timeline these projects. Considering oil is a non-renewable resource, each oil field will only produce oil for a finite amount of time. There are currently 4 main oil fields offshore that have multiple drilling sites. Petroleum companies continue to explore off the Grand Banks, the Labrador Shelf, and the west and south coasts of the island. So first we have in 1979, the discovery of the Hibernia oil field. In the 1980s, like I mentioned, 3 more oil fields were discovered. In 1997 was our first barrel of oil. It came from the Hibernia main platform. In 2002, Terra Nova oil field began operations. 2005, the White Rose oil field begins operations. And then in 2017, the Hebron oil fields began operations. Now, we can't talk about the offshore oil industry without talking about its challenges and its tragedies. The Ocean Ranger was a vessel with a drilling facility and living quarters on the Hibernia oil field from 1981 to 1982. On February 14, 1982, a severe winter storm struck the coast of Newfoundland and the fated Ocean Ranger. That evening, a port light, which is a porthole window, broke. You can actually see the portholes on the Ocean Ranger in this image here. And water began to rush in. Additionally, the ballast control panel began to malfunction because of this occurrence. Not long after midnight on February 15th, a Mayday call was sent out from the Ocean Ranger as it began to list, requesting immediate assistance. The last call from the Ocean Ranger was dispatched at 1:30 a.m. local time. There will be no further radio communications from Ocean Ranger. We are going to lifeboat stations. Assistance was hampered due to the weather, and the rig sank by 3 a.m. There were 84 crew members, none of whom survived. Men either drowned or died of hypothermia. Missions and investigations discovered improper training and equipment failure. The Canadian oil and gas industry demanded many improvements, with better training, inspections and oversight, and mandatory survival suits. It's hard to fathom now, considering survival suits are so commonplace, but they weren't mandatory at the time, so many people who worked on this rig didn't have them. A couple of decades later came the Cougar helicopter crash. On March 12, 2009, a Cougar helicopter departed from St. John's International Airport en route to the Hibernia oil fields. Due to a loss of oil pressure, the helicopter decided to turn back, but it went down only about 10 minutes later. Only 1 of the 18 people on board survived. An equipment error was the cause, as a titanium rod had broken, which caused the dramatic loss of oil pressure. The company knew about this, and the craft was supposedly be able to stay in flight for up to 30 minutes with all of the different equipment improvements and things that were in place, but that wasn't the case. While all passengers had received proper ditch training, with such a short amount of time to do so, escape was nearly impossible. Now let's talk about the future for the offshore oil industry, or what we expect to happen. Hibernia Main, Hibernia South, White Rose, and Hebron are still in operation today as of the recording of this video, which is in 2023, with projected production into the 2030s. As of 2023 as well, the offshore oil industry in Newfoundland and Labrador accounts for 25% of the province's gross domestic product and 41% of our exports over the last 20 years. So now it's time to review. I'm going to ask you to please complete the activities in Brightspace. Included there is a discovery into the events around the Ocean Ranger disaster. I know that's kind of heavy, so please, if you need to take a break, please take one. But also remember these types of things in history we have to learn from. Please do that there now, and I'll see you next time.